A young black woman had spent years pushing her food cart through the crumbling streets of Northwood, serving cheap hot meals just to get by, but she never let hardship harden her heart. So when she saw an old man in a battered wheelchair being mocked by a group of teenagers in the parking lot of a grocery store, she didn't hesitate. She stepped in, shielded him, and gave him the last plate of food she had for the day. What she didn't know was that the disabled old man was actually a billionaire, and her quiet act of kindness was about to pull her into a world she had never imagined and change both of their lives forever. Before we dive deeper into this story, let us know where you're watching from, and don't forget to hype and subscribe for more heartwarming stories every day. Northwood District was the kind of place nobody put on postcards: cracked sidewalks, sagging porches, faded billboards that should have been taken down years ago. Everything about it looked tired. Even the air felt worn out, carrying the smell of fried oil, old buses, and the steady hum of people just trying to survive another day. And right in the middle of all that noise, Ava Coleman pushed her food cart toward the Northwood Market corner like she did every morning. She was 25, small-framed, with warm brown skin and tired eyes that had seen way too much for her age. Her hair was tied back in a tight bun, held together more by willpower than the cheap elastic band she used. To strangers she looked like any other street vendor, but folks in the neighborhood knew she didn't complain, didn't slow down, didn't quit, because quitting didn't feed rent, didn't fix the broken light in her single rented room under the old radio repair shop, and definitely didn't change her future. She woke up every day before sunrise, boiled rice on a shaky stove, seasoned beans with whatever spices she had left, and whispered a small prayer over the pot. Not a prayer for herself. She'd stopped doing that a long time ago, but a prayer that the food would last, that it would stretch just one more day, that she wouldn't have to choose between eating and saving up for electricity again. But here's the twist: Ava wasn't just cooking to sell. Hidden beneath the cart, wrapped in a towel to keep it warm, she always prepared one extra meal, and she never ate it. Not once. People assumed it was for a late customer, or maybe for herself when the day was done. But nobody knew the truth yet, not until later, when everything changed. As Ava crossed the street, a bus sped past, splashing muddy water right over her shoes. She stopped, let out a sharp breath, then kept pushing. She didn't have time to get frustrated. Northwood wouldn't slow down for her, it never had. When she reached the corner, she set up her small metal stand under a rusted awning beside an abandoned pawn shop. Same spot every day. Same dents on the sidewalk, same loose bolt on the cart she kept meaning to fix. But today something felt off. The market was louder than usual. People moved with a nervous edge, glancing over their shoulders as if waiting for trouble. And right when Ava lit her small portable stove, right when she thought today would be like every other day, a siren wailed in the distance, echoing off the brick walls. That was twist number one. The city felt tense, alive in a way she didn't like. But Ava didn't know yet that this tension, this strange energy, was the first ripple in the chain of events leading straight to the night her entire life flipped. She wiped down her counter, forced a smile as her first customer approached, and pushed the uneasy feeling aside. She didn't have the luxury of asking why things felt strange. Survival didn't leave room for intuition. But Northwood had already started shifting under her feet. Something, or someone, was headed her way. And the moment they crossed paths, everything she thought she knew about her world, her future, and her own worth would crack open. She just didn't know it yet. By the time Ava closed up that night, the sky over Rivershore had already turned the color of wet steel. A light fall drizzle drifted across Northwood District, the kind that wasn't heavy enough to cancel plans but cold enough to cut right through your jacket. Ava pulled her cart toward the old supermarket lot across from the bus station. She usually didn't pass through there at night, but business had been surprisingly good, and she wanted to drop off leftover cardboard boxes at the recycling bin behind the store before heading home. Her fingers were numb, her shoes soaked, and all she could think about was how cold her room would be when she got back. She was tired, really tired, but tired wasn't the twist tonight, because the moment she turned into the parking lot, she froze. Under the flickering street lamp at the far end, she saw 3 teenage boys circling someone. They weren't robbing him. No, it was worse in a different way. They were bored, careless, thoughtless, kicking the front wheel of a twisted rusty wheelchair every time the old man in it tried to pull back. Each kick made a metallic squeal echo across the lot, and the man, an older white man with silver hair gone wild in the rain, just sat there trying to shield his chest with his arms. No yelling, no fighting back, just absorbing it all in silence like he'd been through this before. People walked past, a couple rushed into the supermarket and pretended not to see, a car slowed down, then sped up. No one wanted to get involved, of course they didn't. Northwood had trained people to look away. But Ava wasn't built like that. Something in her chest tightened, the same tight pull she felt whenever she saw someone slipping through the cracks. She pushed her cart aside, stepped forward, and before she could second-guess herself, she planted herself right between the boys and the old man. The rain hit her face, cold and sharp. She didn't blink. "Leave him alone," she said. Not loud, not dramatic, just firm. The boys stared at her, surprised that someone actually stepped in. Then they laughed. One nudged the other with his elbow. "Look at this hero," he said. "Northwood Wonder Woman, huh?" Ava didn't move, didn't flinch. She just kept her eyes locked on theirs, steady and unbroken in a way that made even reckless kids hesitate. It took 5 seconds, 10, long enough for one boy to mutter whatever, "Man, let's go," before turning away. They walked off, still laughing, still pretending they didn't care that she'd ruined their fun. The moment they disappeared behind the row of dumpsters, the old man finally spoke. "I'm fine, don't worry." His voice was thin, unsteady, shaking the way exhausted people shake. Ava turned toward him, rain dripping from her eyelashes. "You don't look fine," she said quietly. "Come on, let's get you out of the rain." He didn't argue, didn't react much at all, just stared down at his hands, hands that were trembling more from pain than fear. Ava pushed his wheelchair toward the small covered loading area beside the supermarket. The wheels squeaked with every rotation, metal grinding against metal. When they got under the awning, she knelt beside him and unlocked the small compartment under her cart. Inside, wrapped in a towel to keep it warm, was the extra meal she had made that morning. Rice, beans, a small piece of fried chicken she'd saved for herself. She handed it to him like it wasn't a big deal. Like she hadn't gone all day without eating. He stared at the container for a long second before lifting his eyes to hers. No smile, no thank you, just a small nod, a tired one, a meaningful one, a nod that said more than words could. There was something deep in his eyes, something old and worn down, like a person who'd lived through a dozen storms and didn't bother explaining any of them. Ava didn't push. She didn't ask his story, didn't ask his name. Northwood had taught her that some people carried pain too heavy to unpack under a supermarket roof. She stood up, brushed the rainwater from her sleeves and said softly, "If you're hungry tomorrow, I'll be around Northwood Market." The old man swallowed, slow and careful. He didn't speak, just nodded again, even smaller this time. Ava backed away, pushed her cart toward the street, and didn't look back until she reached the sidewalk. He was still there, still holding the container, still following her with his eyes like he wasn't sure what to make of her. She didn't know what to make of him either, but as she stepped back into the cold night, she felt something shift, just a little. Something she couldn't name yet. Something she'd remember later, when everything blew wide open. For now it was just a quiet moment in a rainy parking lot. A girl who had nothing giving her last meal to a man who had even less, and neither of them realizing yet how this small act, this single simple choice, was the moment their two broken worlds started moving toward each other. The next afternoon, Ava rolled her food cart back to Northwood Market like nothing unusual had happened the night before. She didn't expect to see him again. Honestly, she thought maybe he'd found a shelter, or maybe someone else had stepped in after she left. Northwood was unpredictable that way. People drifted in and out like shadows, but when she turned the corner, she froze for half a second. There he was, the old man from the parking lot, sitting under the rusted metal awning of the abandoned pawn shop, right where the shade hit the ground in a crooked diagonal. Same wiry gray hair, same hunched posture, same broken wheelchair with the front wheel turned slightly inward like it was tired too. He wasn't looking for her. He wasn't looking at anything. He just sat there, quiet, still, like the world had left him on pause, and that was the first twist of the day. He came back. Ava unlocked her cart, lit her small stove, and tried to play it cool. She didn't call out, didn't wave. But when the lunchtime crowd thinned and she finally scooped the last serving of rice and beans into a container, she glanced over. He was watching her now, eyes tired but alert, almost like he'd been waiting. Ava walked over and placed the warm meal beside him without a word. He didn't smile, didn't speak, just gave her that small nod again. A nod that somehow said, "Thank you, I'm starving, and I don't know how to talk to anyone anymore," all at once. And that was how it started. One day became two, two became three, then a week, then two. Rain or heat, busy or slow, the old man, who people around Northwood casually nicknamed Mr. Grant, appeared under that awning. Same hour, same posture, same silence. He didn't ask for anything, didn't try to get close, didn't even look surprised when she brought him food each day. He accepted it like people accept medicine they know they need, carefully, quietly, almost gratefully, but never out loud. And Ava, even though she tried not to, started noticing things, small things, things that didn't fit the image of a random homeless man people assumed he was. His posture, for one. Even in that busted wheelchair, he sat straight, not like someone who'd lived on the streets for years, but like someone who'd been taught discipline a long time ago. His hands too. Rough and weathered, sure, but his nails were trimmed, cleaner than most of the men who worked at the mechanic shop down the road. And the scar. The first time she noticed it was when his collar slipped as he leaned to pick up the spoon. A long pale surgical scar, running across the base of his neck and down his shoulder blade. Not a cut, a procedure, a serious one. The kind people didn't get unless they'd had money once, real money. But every time Ava's curiosity pushed her brain to ask who he really was, she shut herself down. It wasn't her business. She didn't help him to get answers. She helped him because he was hungry. Simple as that. The rest of Northwood, they didn't see it that way. Vendors on both sides of her cart never missed a chance to comment. "Girl, you're too soft," one woman said, shaking her head as Ava handed off another plate. "You're wasting food on a man who won't even look you in the eye." A guy selling knockoff phone chargers muttered, "That one's dangerous, you can tell. He's hiding something." Two teenagers laughed as they passed by. "She feeding that addict again. Man, people stupid." Ava took it all in and didn't argue. She didn't need their approval, and honestly they didn't know what she knew, that his hands didn't shake like a user's hands. They shook like someone whose pain was deeper, older, buried behind ribs and regret. One afternoon, when a fruit vendor scoffed and asked, "Why you keep wasting time on him?" Ava wiped her hands on her apron and said a single line she didn't plan but meant with her whole chest, "If I stop giving, what does that make me?" The vendor rolled her eyes and walked off, but Ava didn't care. That sentence stuck with her long after the day ended. Maybe because it was the truth, maybe because she needed to hear herself say it, or maybe because deep down, something about this quiet man, this Mr. Grant people mocked from a distance, pulled at her in a way she couldn't explain yet. She didn't know his story, didn't know his past, didn't know why he wound up in a broken wheelchair outside a failing market, but she knew one thing, and it was enough for now. Every time she saw him sitting there, waiting, hungry but dignified, she felt something shift inside her, something steady, something right. And she had no idea that this small daily ritual, this simple exchange of food and silence, was the thread that would eventually unravel everything she thought she knew about her own life. The mystery had already begun, she just wasn't aware of it yet. By the third week, Ava knew something was off about the old man, not in a dangerous way, just in a way that didn't line up with the story everyone around Northwood kept trying to pin on him. People said he was an addict, a runaway, a nobody, but Ava wasn't seeing that. Every day when she handed him a warm meal, she noticed details most people were too impatient or too judgmental to pay attention to. The first thing was his hands. Rough, yes, weathered, absolutely, but his nails, clean, trimmed, too clean for someone supposedly living on the street. Not polished, not fancy, just maintained. Like he still kept certain habits alive even when everything else had fallen apart. The second thing was the way he ate, slowly, deliberately, taking small bites, setting the spoon down between each one, sitting straight no matter how uncomfortable the twisted wheelchair looked. People who live without structure don't eat like that. People who've lived with discipline, real discipline, don't lose those manners, even when the world burns around them. And then came the biggest detail of all. One slow afternoon, a gust of wind pushed his collar aside while he leaned forward. That's when Ava saw it, a long pale surgical scar running from the side of his neck down into his shirt. Not a scratch, not a street injury. A medical scar. The kind that only comes from serious surgery. The kind that requires specialists, money, insurance, the whole package. She knew people in Northwood. Nobody here got surgeries like that. Nobody here could afford them. That scar didn't belong to this sidewalk. That scar belonged to another life entirely, a life he clearly wasn't talking about. And just when Ava convinced herself she was overthinking everything, that he was just another unlucky soul beaten down by life, another twist hit out of nowhere. It was a Wednesday, busy, windy, customers lined up for hot bowls of rice because the weather made everyone crave something warm. Ava was serving a woman with 2 kids when a sleek navy blue SUV rolled slowly into the street. The kind of car that didn't belong anywhere near Northwood unless someone was lost or looking for trouble. It parked across from the market, engine humming softly like it was too clean for this neighborhood. A man stepped out, tall, polished, wearing a deep blue suit that looked brand new, hair combed perfectly, shoes shining under the streetlight. He didn't belong here either. He didn't even look like he wanted to breathe the air. His eyes scanned the sidewalk, once, twice, like he was searching for something he didn't want to find. And then he found it. His gaze locked on the old man under the awning. His entire expression shifted, shock first, then disbelief, then something else, fear, maybe guilt, maybe both. Ava watched his shoulders tense as he took a single step toward the old man, then stopped, completely froze. For a moment, it looked like he was about to call out a name, but he didn't. Instead, he turned right back around, walked straight to his SUV, and drove off like he'd seen a ghost. The whole encounter lasted less than a minute, but the tension it left behind felt thick enough to cut with a knife. When the crowd faded and Ava finally walked over with a fresh plate of food, she couldn't stop herself. She crouched down beside him and asked softly, "Do you know him?" The old man didn't look up, didn't blink, didn't shift. He just paused with the spoon halfway to his mouth, then kept eating like nothing had happened. No answer, no expression. Silence, heavy enough to say everything and nothing at the same time. Ava didn't push, but she felt the shift. She felt it deep in her gut. Something was going on with him. Something bigger than Northwood. Bigger than her food cart, bigger than the cracked sidewalk she stood on every day. Something he was hiding or running from, and the more she tried to let it go, the louder the question echoed in her mind. Who exactly was this man before life broke him? The mystery wasn't just growing now, it was starting to close in. For almost a month, Ava had gotten used to seeing the old man, Mr. Grant as the market folks called him, sitting under the same cracked awning every afternoon. It had become so normal that her eyes now automatically searched for him before she even unfolded her cart. And that's why the moment she didn't see him, something in her chest tightened. Not panic, not yet, but something close. It started on a Thursday. Cloudy, humid, the kind of day where the air felt too heavy to breathe. Ava set up her cart like always, glanced toward the awning, expecting that familiar bent posture, that worn-out coat, that quiet stillness. Nothing. Just an empty patch of concrete and an old shopping cart tipped over by last night's wind. Ava shook her head lightly, telling herself he was probably late. Maybe the squeaky wheel finally gave up. Maybe he found a warmer spot, or a church basement, or a clinic. She tried to focus on serving customers, smiling, handing out change. But every few minutes her eyes drifted again, left side of the market, under the rusted gutter, exactly where he should have been. Still nothing. By the time she closed her cart that evening, the spot had stayed empty for 8 straight hours. She walked home with a knot in her stomach. She pretended wasn't there. The next afternoon, Ava arrived early, earlier than normal, earlier than needed. She kept telling herself she wasn't worried, but the truth was written on her face. She kept scanning the street like she was searching for a family member. And again, nothing. No wheelchair, no old coat, no slow, tired nod. The awning looked wrong without him there, like a sentence missing its last word. Ava wiped her hands on her apron and walked toward the vendors. "Hey Margot," she asked the woman selling socks nearby, "you seen that old man? The one who sits right here every day?" Margot shrugged, biting off a thread. "The white one in the busted chair. Haven't seen him since Tuesday. Maybe he finally moved on." Moved on. The phrase punched harder than she expected. Ava went stall to stall asking the same question. The fruit seller hadn't seen him. The spice vendor hadn't seen him. The old guy who sharpened knives shook his head and said, "People disappear all the time around here, sweetheart." That didn't comfort her. Not even close. By noon, Ava could barely eat the sandwich she brought for herself. Her appetite was gone. Her focus scattered. She kept glancing toward the street like she was waiting for a miracle. Deep down she knew something wasn't right. If he could have shown up, he would have. That was the kind of man he was. Predictable, disciplined, routine-driven even in brokenness. When she closed her cart that evening, she walked slower than ever. Her heart wasn't just tight anymore. It was sinking. The third day rolled in with a quiet that felt unnatural. The weather was cool, the sun shy, the market busy, but Ava's world felt muted, like all the sound had been sucked out of it. She didn't even pretend to work normally this time. Every few minutes she stepped away from the cart, checked the sidewalks, scanned every direction like she'd lost something irreplaceable. Because in a strange way, she had. Around midday, as she was refilling a pot of rice, a shadow fell across her cart. She looked up, expecting a customer. It wasn't. A man she had never seen before, tall, dark-skinned, clean-cut, wearing a gray jacket, was standing right in front of her cart. No expression, no smile, no greeting. "You Ava Coleman?" he asked quietly. Her breath caught. "Yeah, that's me." He didn't nod, didn't blink. He just slid a brown envelope onto the counter like he was dropping off evidence for a case. "This is for you." Ava frowned. "Who sent?" He cut her off. "Read it, and don't tell anyone you got it." Then he walked away, fast, no turn back, no hesitation. Ava stared at the envelope as if it might burn through the metal counter. Her hands were trembling when she finally opened it. Inside was one line, typed clean and centered: Harborview Hotel, room 1911, 5 p.m. Don't tell anyone. That was it. No name, no explanation, no signature. Harborview Hotel, she knew that place. Everybody in Rivershore did. A luxury tower by the river. A place for people who lived in a different universe. A place someone like her had no business even standing near. But the second she saw that room number, her breath hitched, because deep inside, without needing proof, without needing logic, she knew exactly who it was about. Mr. Grant, the man who never asked for anything. The man she fed for weeks. The man who had vanished overnight. Ava closed the envelope slowly, pressing her thumb into the crease to steady herself. Whatever this was, it wasn't random. And there was no way she wasn't going. At 5 p.m., she'd walk straight into a world she didn't know, because the only thing scarier than showing up was not knowing what happened to him. Ava showed up at the Harborview Hotel at exactly 4:58 p.m. She had never been this close to it before. She'd only seen it in ads on bus stops and on shiny brochures people tossed into trash bins. Up close, the building looked unreal. Massive walls of glass, polished stone, bellboys in uniforms that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Everything gleamed, even the air felt cleaner, like the whole place was built for people who float through life instead of fight through it. Ava adjusted her faded jacket, the one with a stubborn stain near the zipper, exhaled once, and stepped toward the revolving door. Immediately, a security guard moved in front of her, not aggressively, but with the firm energy of someone who didn't think she belonged here. "Ma'am, can I help you?" His tone wasn't curious, it was suspicious. Ava swallowed, but kept her voice steady. "I'm here to see someone. Room 1911. The guard blinked slowly, the way people do when they think they misheard. Then he scanned her up and down, eyes lingering on her thrift store sneakers. "Do you have a reservation?" "No," Ava said. "I was invited." He gave a tight smile, one of those smiles that says "You sure about that?" Then he stepped aside, just enough to let her enter, but he didn't look happy about it. Inside the lobby, she felt like she'd stepped into another planet. Marble floors, golden lights, a giant fountain with water falling so smoothly, it looked fake. People walked past her in tailored suits and designer dresses without even seeing her. She approached the front desk, gripping the envelope like a lifeline. The receptionist, perfect hair, perfect smile, looked up. "Welcome to the Harbor View. How may I assist you?" Ava slid the note forward. "I was told to come to room 1911. The receptionist read it. Her eyebrows rose, just a little. Then she pasted the polite smile back on. "Of course, one moment please." She made a call, whispered something, nodded, then she gestured to a man in a black suit standing by the elevators. "He'll take you." The man didn't say a word, he simply began walking, and Ava followed him through a hallway lined with art pieces she didn't understand and chandeliers that looked too delicate to exist. Her footsteps echoed behind his, her heart pounded. By the time they reached a tall wooden door with a gold 1911 plaque, Ava felt like her ribs were too tight for her lungs. The man knocked twice, then opened the door just enough for her to enter. "Go ahead," he said. "He's waiting." Ava stepped inside. The suite was bigger than her entire building. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the wide Rivershore River, catching the orange glow of sunset. Everything looked expensive, the rugs, the furniture, even the air felt like it cost money. At the center of the room sat a sleek modern wheelchair, its back turned toward her. For a moment Ava froze, then the chair moved, slowly, almost dramatically. When it rotated fully, her breath caught. It was him. The old man, Mr. Grant, except not the man she knew. The messy beard was gone, his hair was trimmed, his skin was clean, his clothes, a crisp white shirt with neat cuffs and tailored pants. He didn't look like a homeless man anymore. He looked like someone important, someone powerful, but his eyes, those were the same, tired, heavy, deep. "Ava," he said gently, voice steady in a way she'd never heard before. "Thank you for coming." Her hands shook. "Mr. Grant," he shook his head once, calm, controlled. "My name isn't Grant." A long pause, a long inhale. "It's Lawrence," he said. "Lawrence Keaton." The name hit her like cold air, because she knew that name. Everybody did. It was the name from headlines, from scandal, from one of the biggest financial collapses in the Northeast. Lawrence Keaton, the businessman who vanished after everything fell apart. Ava stared at him, frozen between confusion and disbelief. He continued, "I didn't lie about being tired, or being broken, but I didn't end up on the street by accident." The way he said it, calm, almost rehearsed, made the room feel even bigger. "I lost everything," he said. "My company, my family, my reputation, and after the accident, I lost my ability to walk." Ava blinked hard, gripping the strap of her bag. Her brain raced, her heart raced faster. "You're him," she whispered. "Lawrence Keaton, the Lawrence Keaton." He nodded. "Once," he said quietly. "But when I showed up in Northwood, I just wanted to disappear. And then, you showed up." Ava didn't know what to say, didn't know what to ask first, but one thing was certain. The man she fed under the awning was not who the world thought he was, and whatever he was about to tell her next was going to change everything. For a long moment Ava didn't breathe. She just stood there, staring at the clean-shaven man in the expensive wheelchair, trying to match him with the quiet, broken figure she had fed for weeks. He waited, calm, steady, like he expected this shock, like he'd seen it before in other faces. Then he spoke again, his voice low and controlled. "Ava, I owe you an explanation." She nodded, but her throat felt tight. She didn't know what she was about to hear, but she could feel it in her bones. It wasn't going to be simple. Lawrence took a breath, the kind a person takes before ripping off a bandage. "My fall didn't happen overnight. It came in pieces, and now the story started coming out. Not slow, not overly dramatic, just raw." He told her about the board members he had trusted, men he had mentored, people he believed would protect the company they built together. Instead, they pushed him out. They framed him for decisions he didn't make, scandals he didn't benefit from, deals he never approved. And the media, they ate it up. Headlines turned him into a monster, a thief, a cold-hearted billionaire who destroyed people's lives. "I couldn't defend myself," he said. "Everything I said made me look guiltier, and every lie they printed spread faster than the truth ever could." Ava swallowed. She had seen stories like that on TV, but she had never sat in the same room with the person behind the headline. Lawrence went on, "My family wanted nothing to do with me. My wife left, my son stopped answering my calls." His voice didn't shake, but his eyes did, just a flicker. "Then the accident happened," he said. "A car crash. I survived, but from the waist down everything changed. The wheelchair, the scars, the pain in his hands." Suddenly it all clicked in Ava's mind. He wasn't shaking because of addiction. He was shaking because his body had never healed right. He leaned back slightly, gaze dropping to his lap. "I became a man who had nothing, no name, no home, no one who cared whether I lived or died." Ava blinked hard because she recognized that feeling. That kind of loneliness didn't need an explanation. Lawrence continued, his voice quieter now. "So I walked away. No press, no statements, no lawyers. I left everything behind to see if kindness still existed somewhere. Kindness that wasn't bought. Kindness that didn't have a camera behind it. Kindness with no angle." He locked eyes with her, steady, honest, painfully grateful. "And for weeks, Ava, you were the only person who looked at me like I was human." She froze, because she hadn't done anything special, at least not in her mind. She had only done what felt right. But for him, for someone who had been chewed up and spat out by the world, it meant everything. Then came the twist she didn't expect. "I didn't ask you here just to thank you," he said. "I asked you here because I want to build something with you." Ava blinked, stunned. "With me?" He nodded once. "I want to start a foundation, a real one, focused on feeding the poor, rebuilding neighborhoods like Northwood, creating jobs instead of just handing out scraps. The Keaton Coleman Foundation, that's the name." Her heart jumped. "Coleman as in my name?" "Yes," he said, without hesitation. "Because you will be the face of it, the heart of it, the reason it exists." Ava stood there, speechless, completely unprepared. No one had ever offered her anything like this, not a job, not a chance, not a future. And here was this man she fed under a rusted awning, offering her a seat at a table she'd never even dreamed of. "Why me?" she whispered. "Because," he said, leaning forward slightly, "you gave to someone you thought had nothing. And that makes you someone the world needs a lot more of." Ava felt her chest tighten, not from fear but from something overwhelming and unfamiliar. Hope, real hope. Lawrence wasn't finished. "I don't want pity," he said. "I don't want redemption. I want purpose, and I want it with someone who understands what real kindness looks like." She stared at him, stunned, breathless, her world spinning. Because in that moment she understood the truth behind everything he'd said, behind everything he'd lived. This wasn't just a businessman looking for a comeback. This was a man trying to find himself again. And he believed she was the reason he could. The next week moved fast, so fast, Ava barely had time to understand what she'd just agreed to. One minute she was a street vendor serving bowls of rice for $5 each, the next she was sitting beside a former billionaire planning a foundation that carried her last name. But stepping into Lawrence's world, that was the part no one prepared her for. It started at the Rivershore Government Building, a place she'd only ever seen on TV when politicians held press conferences. The entrance alone looked intimidating: glass walls, metal detectors, guards who didn't blink. Ava walked in with a folder clutched to her chest, wearing her cleanest shirt, the one she saved for job interviews. But to the staff inside, she didn't look like someone coming to talk about a partnership. She looked like someone applying for a permit to sell hot dogs on the sidewalk. A receptionist eyed her from behind the counter. "Your appointment is with who again?" The tone wasn't confused, it was doubtful, suspicious, like Ava was lying. Ava opened her mouth to explain, but before she could finish, the woman cut her off. Do you have ID, proof of business, an invitation? Ma'am, we can't just let anyone walk in. Ava felt her face heat, her chest tighten. She wasn't doing anything wrong, yet she suddenly felt out of place in a way that stung deeper than she expected. She tried again, politely. I'm here with... A voice behind her sliced through the room. She's with me. Everyone turned. Lawrence rolled forward, flanked by two assistants and wearing a charcoal suit that made him look like he'd stepped out of a magazine. And the shift was instant. Faces softened. Voices changed tones. The same receptionist who'd questioned Ava seconds earlier straightened up and smiled like her job depended on it. Mr. Keaton, we weren't told you'd be joining us today. Yes, you were, Lawrence replied, calm but firm, and I expect Miss Coleman to be treated with the same respect as anyone else in this building. Ava froze. It didn't fix everything, but for the first time that day she felt seen. The real test though came 3 nights later at the Rivershore Annual Gala, an event so fancy Ava nearly backed out twice on the drive over. The venue glowed under chandeliers the size of cars. Guests arrived in gowns, tuxedos, glittering jewelry, every inch polished. Ava stepped out of the car wearing a simple navy blue dress she'd borrowed from a neighbor. She looked nice, pretty even, but next to the gold, diamonds, and luxury fabrics around her, she felt painfully small. Inside she barely made it 2 steps before someone tapped her shoulder. Excuse me, table service is through the back corridor. Ava blinked. I'm not. Oh, the woman cut in, cheeks pink. Oh sorry, I just assumed. Ava forced a smile. It's fine. But it wasn't fine, because for the next 20 minutes, variations of that same mistake happened again and again. Miss, can you refill the water pitchers? Where do we leave the donation envelopes? Oh honey, the uniforms are black and white tonight, wrong dress code. Every time Ava corrected them she felt smaller, more exposed, more like an intruder in a place that wasn't built for someone with her skin, her clothes, her background. She was seconds away from sneaking out when the lights dimmed and a spotlight hit the stage. Lawrence rolled to the podium, cameras flashing from every direction. The crowd fell quiet. He began speaking, not in the polished, distant tone billionaires usually had, but in a way that felt honest, real. He talked about loss, about betrayal, about watching everything he built collapse under lies. The room listened, stunned, and then he said something that made Ava's heart stop. But in the darkest season of my life, he continued, one person treated me like I still mattered, like I was still human. Heads turned, curious. That person is the reason I'm standing here today. Not my board, not my former partners. A woman from Northwood District who gave me food when no one else would even look at me. The spotlight shifted, straight onto Ava. The room erupted, people stood, applauded. Cameras swung toward her like she was the star of the night. Ava wasn't used to eyes on her. She wasn't used to attention at all. But as the applause washed over her, one thing cut through the noise, the look Lawrence gave her from the stage. Not pity, not gratitude laced with debt, acknowledgement, respect, partnership. In that moment she realized something huge. She wasn't being invited into his world, she was helping change it. Once the gala lights faded and the cameras stopped chasing her name, Ava did something nobody expected, not even Lawrence. She didn't move into a fancy office. She didn't start giving interviews. She didn't spend a single dollar on clothes, cars, or any of the things people thought she should want. Instead she went straight back to Northwood. The same cracked sidewalk, the same broken lights, the same people who had watched her push that old food cart for years. Except this time, she came back with a vision. The first project of the Keaton Coleman Foundation was a small building 3 blocks from where she used to park her cart. It was a worn-down bakery that had been closed for almost 10 years. The sign was faded, the walls were peeling, and the whole place looked like it had given up hope long before Northwood did. But to Ava, it was perfect. We can fix it, she told Lawrence's team. We don't need luxury, we need warmth. And just like that, the renovation began. Quick, focused and intentional. No marble, no gold, no chandeliers, just good lighting, simple furniture, and clean walls that smelled like fresh paint and second chances. When the doors finally opened, the sign outside read Coleman's Table. Not Coleman and Keaton, not Keaton Foundation cafeteria. Coleman's table, a place where you sat down without feeling judged, where people from every corner of River Shore, construction workers, nurses, teachers, even a few curious city officials, lined up for warm food that tasted like home and didn't cost half their paycheck. Ava worked behind the counter on the very first day, apron on, hair pulled back, welcoming each customer by name if she knew it. She didn't act like a boss, she acted like she'd always acted, present, grounded, human. And people felt it. They felt safe there. They felt equal there. And that was the whole point. But she didn't stop, not even close. A month after opening the restaurant, Ava pitched her next idea. A food truck, she told Lawrence during a planning meeting. But not like the trendy ones. Something that goes to the people who can't make it to us. Shelters, bridges, back alleys, places nobody visits unless they have to. Lawrence didn't hesitate. Do it, he said. So they bought an old truck, a real rust bucket, and turned it into the cleanest, warmest traveling kitchen in River Shore. The name on the side was painted with steady, simple letters, Coleman Outreach Line. Hot meals with dignity. Not charity, not handouts. Dignity. Ava drove it herself. She didn't send volunteers. She didn't hire influencers. She didn't live stream the process or film reactions for clout. She showed up quietly, with gloves on her hands and steam rising from the serving window, under overpasses, behind abandoned malls, near bus stations where people slept on benches. She handed out hot meals with the same gentle smile she once gave Lawrence under the Northwood awning. No camera, no spotlight, no applause, and every time someone tried to thank her, she just shook her head and said, "Eat first, that's all." Some nights she'd return home exhausted, smelling like broth and onions, her clothes covered in tiny sauce splatters, but she never complained. She never paused, because now she wasn't just surviving, she was building something bigger than herself, something real, something that mattered. And the twist, the higher she climbed, the more grounded she became. She never stopped being the girl who pushed a dented food cart. She never forgot what it felt like to be invisible. She never let the success change the way she saw people, or the way she wanted them to be treated. People asked her for interviews, podcasts, features on major networks. She turned all of them down. "I'm not trying to be a story," she said. "I'm trying to serve one meal at a time." Still whispers spread through the city. "Have you been to Coleman's table yet? Did you see that food truck? That's the girl from the gala. She used to sell food in the street. Now she's changing the whole district." Ava didn't chase the attention chased her, and somewhere watching her quietly from the back of meetings and through the window of the restaurant he helped her build, Lawrence couldn't hide the small proud smile on his face. This everything she was creating was exactly the reason he had chosen her. Success didn't erase the past, it never does. If anything, the higher Ava climbed, the more she noticed the shadows still clinging to Lawrence, quiet, patient, waiting for their moment. In public, Lawrence looked strong, confident, like a man rebuilding his empire one brick at a time, but in private, Ava could see the cracks. She saw it in the way he paused, mid-sentence sometimes, staring at nothing like he was replaying something he didn't want to remember. And more than anything, she saw it in the place he couldn't bring himself to go back to. The old Keaton Tower. It sat across the river, a massive steel and glass monolith that used to carry his name in gold lettering. Now the letters were gone, replaced by a new corporate logo that looked colder, sharper, like it had something to prove. One evening, after a long meeting at the foundation, Ava found Lawrence sitting by the window in the office, staring at the distant silhouette of the tower. He didn't speak, he didn't need to. The weight in the room said enough. "You okay?" she asked quietly. He exhaled, slow. "I spent half my life in that building," he said. "Made decisions I thought would protect people. Built a company I thought would outlast me." His eyes tightened. Turns out it didn't even outlast the lies. Ava didn't know what to say. Some wounds weren't meant to be bandaged with words. So she just stayed beside him, letting the silence fill with understanding instead of pressure. Lawrence's voice turned softer. "I'm not angry anymore," he said. "Just tired." And Ava believed him. Because his shoulders weren't tense from rage, they were tense from grief that had overstayed its welcome. But the person who struggled more than Lawrence realized was Ava herself. Success wasn't simple. She didn't get to forget her past either. The nights she slept in freezing rooms, the days she had to choose between rent and groceries, the years she'd been treated like invisible background noise. And now, surrounded by polished floors and wealthy donors, she felt like she was living two lives at once. So she wrote. Late at night, after the restaurant closed and the food truck was parked, she sat at her tiny kitchen table and put everything she felt into a letter, one she had no intention of sending. She wrote about kindness that didn't come with conditions, how she never helped Lawrence out of pity, or guilt, or some desire to be seen as good. She helped him because when she looked at him, she didn't see a headline or a ruined man, she saw a person who was hurting. She saw humanity where others saw inconvenience. Kindness isn't a transaction, she wrote. It's a chance to remind someone they still belong in this world. Then she folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, and shut it softly. She didn't need him to read it, she just needed to say it, to herself. And yet the universe wasn't done testing them. Early one morning, when Ava walked past the front window of Coleman's table, she saw something that shifted her heartbeat. Lawrence, in his wheelchair, parked on the sidewalk across the river, staring at the Keaton Tower, alone, no assistance, no security, just a man facing the piece of his life that had nearly destroyed him. He didn't go inside, he didn't get closer, he just looked at it, steady, calm, almost peaceful, and for the first time since she met him, Ava realized the past wasn't haunting him anymore. He was letting it go, not with anger, not with revenge, with acceptance. It was his quiet victory, a small one, but powerful. Because sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is stand in front of the thing that hurt them and feel nothing. Ava had driven the Coleman outreach line hundreds of times through Northwood's tight streets, but that afternoon felt different. The sun was dropping low, casting long orange streaks across the cracked sidewalks. People were heading home, traffic rumbling, city noise blending into its usual chaos. Ava was tired, good tired, the kind that came after a long day of serving meals, but she wasn't ready to call it quits yet. Something told her to take the long route home, circle around the block where Lawrence used to sit before she even knew his name. When she turned the corner onto Birch Street, she slammed the brakes a little harder than usual. There, right at the edge of the old brick alleyway, was a boy, small, thin, maybe 7 or 8. His clothes were too big, his shoes were torn, and his arms wrapped around himself like he was trying to disappear inside his own skin. His eyes darted everywhere, full of the same silent panic Ava remembered from another man in another moment. Lawrence, same street, same fear, different generation. Ava didn't hesitate. She parked the truck, hopped down from the driver's seat, and approached slowly, not to startle him. "Hey," she said softly, "you hungry?" The boy stiffened, ready to run, but Ava crouched down, kept her hands visible, spoke gently, just like she had spoken to strangers her whole life. "It's okay, I've got warm food, and socks. You look cold." The word socks made him look up. That was the crack, just enough space for hope to slip through. She walked back to the truck, grabbed a hot meal, mac and cheese with roasted chicken, and a fresh pair of thick wool socks. When she returned, he was still standing there, trembling, but he hadn't run. That alone felt like a miracle. Ava handed him the meal first. "Eat," she said. "Then you can take the socks." He took the food with both hands, almost like he was afraid it might be taken back. The smell hit him, and tears rolled down his face before he even took a bite. That broke Ava a little, in a good way, in the way kindness often does. As he ate, Ava sat on the curb next to him, not too close, just enough to let him know he wasn't alone. She didn't ask questions, didn't demand a story, didn't pry into whatever pain had pushed him onto that corner. She just stayed. When he finally looked up at her, eyes still wet, she smiled gently. "Someday," she said, voice calm and steady, "you'll give to someone else. That's how we survive." He didn't fully understand the sentence, not yet, but it planted something. A seed. You could see it in his eyes, the first flicker of safety in who knows how long. He whispered, "Thank you," barely audible, but it was the kind of thank you that hits straight in the chest, the kind you don't forget. Ava stood, gave him space to breathe, and headed back to the truck. She didn't say goodbye, she didn't insist he stay, she just glanced back once, just once, and saw him staring after her, like she had just done something impossible. As the food truck rolled forward, the sky shifted from orange to gold. The city, which always looked tired at this hour, suddenly seemed softer, brighter, like one tiny act of kindness had tilted the whole world a degree towards something better. Ava didn't notice the beauty of the moment, but the kid did. He kept watching her until she turned the corner and disappeared, his small frame silhouetted against the warm glow of the evening, and for the first time his eyes weren't afraid, they were hopeful. A little, just a little, but enough. The next morning in Rivershore felt different, in a way that no one could quite name. The sun came up the same as always, slow, pale, fighting its way through the haze over the Northwood rooftops. The trash trucks clattered through the alleys. The old neon signs flickered half awake. People trudged toward their morning shifts, coffee in hand, eyes half open. But something in the air had shifted, not big enough for the news, not dramatic enough for headlines, just lighter. Sometimes a city changes because of policies, or elections or scandals, but sometimes it changes because one person made a choice the night before. And that night, it had been Ava. She didn't think she'd done anything grand. She didn't wake up feeling like a hero. She didn't stare at herself in the mirror and say, "Wow, good job changing the world." No, she woke up the way she always did, groggy, hair everywhere, one sock missing, and her phone buzzing with a reminder to restock the food truck pantry. Nothing glamorous, but the city felt her impact anyway. People at Northwood Market whispered that morning. Small things. "Hey, did you hear? That kid, they say someone helped him." "What kid?" "You know, the one always hiding behind Miller's laundry shop. Who helped him?" "Some lady in a truck." "Oh, must have been Ava." Name spread, quietly. Kindness has its own rumor network. Meanwhile, Ava had no idea. She loaded the truck, counted her containers, scribbled inventory notes with her smudged pen. Lawrence called her briefly around 9 a.m. to check on her, the way he always did since they launched the foundation. His voice was weaker than usual, but steady, mature, peaceful in a way it hadn't been for years. "Morning, Ava," he said. "Morning, Mr. Keaton," she teased. "Don't you dare," he chuckled. "Call me Lawrence." "I'll call you whatever mood I'm in," she said, making him laugh again. He asked about her route for the day, the same gentle worry in his tone. "I'm going down Birch Street again," she said, casually, not mentioning the boy. "Good, that street needs light." "Trying," she murmured. "Trying." She always said trying, never bragging, never grandstanding, just trying. And that was the thing that kept surprising Lawrence. A man who had lost everything because powerful people fought for more, while she, someone who never had anything, refused to take even credit. When their call ended, Ava got back to work. She didn't expect anything unusual, but life had its own plans for her. Around lunchtime, something strange started happening. People she didn't know came up to her truck, not just to buy food, but to talk. "Hey," said a woman in a faded denim jacket. "You're Ava, right?" "Yeah," Ava answered, cautious. "You help folks around here." "I try. I saw what you did last night." Ava froze. She hadn't told anyone. She hadn't filmed anything. She hadn't even stayed long. "How did you?" The woman pointed toward Birch Street. "That kid's my nephew," she said. "We've been looking for him for 2 days. My sister's in the hospital, and he ran off thinking he was being a burden. You fed him. You gave him socks. He said you told him something." The woman squinted, trying to remember the boy's exact words. Something like, "Someday you'll give to someone else." He kept repeating it. Ava felt her throat tighten. She hadn't meant those words to travel. She hadn't meant to start anything. But sometimes kindness doesn't ask for permission before it spreads. The woman grabbed her hand suddenly. "Thank you," she said in a fierce whisper. "People around here act like kids like him are invisible, but you saw him." Ava felt the warmth shoot through her chest. Not a prideful warmth, a grateful one. The kind that said maybe yesterday actually mattered. But that wasn't the end. Because within another hour, someone else approached. Then another, and another. A man with a cane told her, "I slept easier last night, hearing what you did." 2 high schoolers, kids who normally never spoke to adults, said softly, "We want to volunteer. if you need help. A barista from the coffee shop across the street whispered, "My mom was homeless for a year. People like you kept her alive." A delivery driver pressed a $10 bill into her hand, saying, "Put that towards someone who needs it more than me." Ava hadn't prepared for any of this. She wasn't used to being looked at like she mattered. She was used to blending into the background, just a food vendor with a warm smile and a beat-up cart. But today, people saw her differently, not because she wanted attention, but because the city needed hope. And somehow, she had become one of the lamps in the dark. That evening, Lawrence watched a news segment on his tablet. Nothing big, just a short piece in the local Rivershore community feed titled, "Small Act of Kindness Sparks Movement in Northwood." The reporter mentioned food being distributed, a young boy being helped by an unidentified woman, and neighbors stepping up to help each other. Lawrence didn't need them to say the name. He knew. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling. His mind flashed back to the first time Ava approached him under that old market canopy with a styrofoam bowl and a worried look in her eyes. A stranger then, a lifeline now, he whispered to himself. "You did it, Ava, without me, without anyone telling you to." There was a quiet trembling in his chest, not sadness, not pain, something gentler, something like healing. He called his driver. "Take me to Northwood," he said. "But sir, it's late." "I'm aware." Lawrence cut him off gently. "Northwood, now." He wanted to see it with his own eyes. Meanwhile, Ava continued her evening rounds. She checked her inventory. Only 4 meals left. She sighed. Normally she saved 2 for emergencies, but tonight wasn't normal. As she passed the old corner where she found the boy, she noticed something she didn't expect. A small group of neighbors handing out blankets. 2 older men were organizing clothing donations. A teenage girl was sweeping the sidewalk. Someone brought bottled water. The whole block, this rundown, forgotten, tired street, was alive, because of one kid, one meal, one pair of socks, one person choosing not to look away. Ava slowed the truck, watching the scene with a stunned half-smile. She didn't take credit, she didn't announce herself. She just observed, letting the moment sink in. Then she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Ava." She turned. Lawrence sat in his modern wheelchair, the street lights reflecting off the silver frame, his driver behind him holding an umbrella. "What are you doing here?" she asked, surprised. "I needed to see this," he said softly. "With my own eyes." She stepped closer, folding her arms. "It's nothing big." He shook his head. "It's everything." He motioned toward the growing circle of neighbors working together. "This," he said, "is what power never gave me. Influence? Yes. Money? More than enough. But this being the reason people help each other, that's something I never had until I met you." Ava felt her cheeks heat. "I didn't plan anything." "I know," he said, "and that's why it worked." There was a pause, a warm, quiet pause filled with understanding neither of them needed to explain. Lawrence looked up at her. "Ava, kindness saved me. Your kindness. I was ready to die invisible, and you saw me, you fed me, you protected me." His voice broke slightly. "Now look around, you gave that same visibility to an entire community." Ava swallowed hard, eyes glistening just a little. "I just did what my mama taught me," she said. "And she must have been extraordinary," he replied. From that night forward, Northwood changed in small but powerful ways. Ava's food truck became more than a food source. It became a meeting point, a hub of hope. People donated supplies, canned goods, socks, gloves, blankets. Local restaurants sent leftovers. Someone even donated a portable heater for winter nights. Ava kept saying, "This ain't me, it's all of us." But people insisted. Her heart started it. The boy she helped, he returned 3 days later, shyly carrying a small drawing. It showed a truck, a bowl of food, and a stick figure woman with a big smile. Underneath, in shaky handwriting, he wrote, "Thank you for seeing me." Ava kept the drawing. She didn't frame it. She didn't post it. She pinned it inside the truck, right above the driver's seat, where she'd see it every morning. One tiny reminder of why she kept showing up. And each day, as the foundation expanded, as volunteers grew, as donors appeared out of nowhere, Ava realized something. Kindness didn't need to be loud. It just needed to be repeated. Over and over, by one person at a time. Like passing a match across 1,000 candles. A few weeks later, Lawrence sat by the riverside in his wheelchair, watching the water shimmer under the morning sun. His health was unpredictable now, but his peace was stable in a way it hadn't been in years. He thought of the man he used to be, sharp, proud, untouchable. The headlines he chased, the power plays, the money, the status. None of it mattered now. What mattered was something smaller, softer. One girl with a food cart and a stubborn insistence that people deserved kindness. He whispered to himself, Ava didn't save me because she knew who I was. She saved me because she knew who she was. And that truth, that unbelievably simple truth, felt like the greatest lesson his whole life had ever offered. Now here's where the story zooms out, where we step back from the streets of Northwood, from Ava and Lawrence, from the food truck and the little boy with the drawing. Here's where the message becomes bigger than one neighborhood, because kindness, real kindness, the kind Ava lives by, looks small when it happens. A bowl of food, a warm pair of socks, a quiet sentence spoken to a scared kid, a gesture toward a lonely man in a wheelchair. Tiny things, forgettable things, but those tiny things become the reasons people don't give up. They become the fuel someone needs to try again. They become the moment someone realizes they still matter. And sometimes, just sometimes, those tiny acts ripple so far you don't even recognize the world they end up changing. So the truth is this, a small act of kindness might not change the entire world, but it will always change someone's world, and that's enough to start everything else. People who look like nobody often carry stories as big as universes. People you overlook may be the ones holding their entire block together. People you walk past may be one gesture away from believing in hope again. Kindness is never wasted, never forgotten, never small. It echoes, it spreads, it survives in people who pass it forward, just like Ava told the boy, someday you'll give to someone else. That's how we survive. And maybe that's the entire point. Not to be famous, not to be perfect, not to be a hero, just to be kind. Right when it matters to someone who needs it, in a moment that could change their life. Because kindness, when given at the right time, can travel farther than any of us will ever see.